We have 1 minute till 6:30. Okay. Welcome to the committee and welcome to the public. Tonight, we're going to review 4 applications for certificates of appropriateness with the Landmarks Preservation Commission. We are reviewing these applications from the point of view of context and appropriateness, and we ask the committee to limit their questions to those kinds of considerations. And Kevin, if you would explain the procedures, we would appreciate your help.
Great. Welcome. If this is your first time joining us virtually, you will notice that you are currently muted, and everyone will remain muted throughout the meeting except for the committee co-chairs, Anthony and David, and any presenters as we move through the agenda. As we move through the agenda, the co-chairs will call on members of the public wishing to speak. You can participate by going to the react icon on your device and pressing the raise hand button, not the wave or thumbs up, as those will disappear. Only press it once. If you press it a second time, your hand will go back down. If you are calling in on the phone, it is *9 to raise hand and *6 to unmute. Be on the lookout for a prompt asking you to confirm unmuting once the co-chairs call on you. The chat is available for technical support only, to help with Zoom software problems, not to ask questions of the co-chairs. They will not see the chats. If you are using an older version of Zoom, you will need to go to the participants section where you will find the raise hand feature there. Please do not raise your actual hand or wave at the screen because we may not be able to see you. Chat me, I'm here for support. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Kevin. The first item on the agenda is 1000 Fifth Avenue, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, an individual landmark, by Linda Bell, the architects. A Bows on the Star building designed by numerous architects, chiefly Alvin Fung and Jacob Bragoon, who designed the initial Rustinian Gothic structures of the Met and constructed in the 1980s with additions in the 2000s. Application is to install the 3 regional entrance doors on the plaza at 83rd Street to create an additional step-free entrance to the museum's public spaces, as well as to undertake a mechanical infrastructure project to replace the north side chiller plant, a project that involves the installation of new cooling towers behind a new louvered screen wall, partially visible at 83rd Street. So is someone here from Barb Linda Bell?
Hi, David. I might be the chairman. Nice to see you.
Okay.
I'm from the Met. I think I may be the only person unmuted right now, but if Henry Miller could be unmuted, he's here from Fire Blender Bell. Henry, are you muted?
Yes,
You're good.
I'm here.
Okay.
Henry Miller from Buyer Blender Bell. Good to meet everyone.
Thank you. So Henry, I think the plan is Henry's going to share the screen and I'll start us off. We have a good cast of characters for you tonight, so you won't get bored hearing one person speak. We have a few of us, and I'll go through the agenda and the speakers and then hand it off to our design team.
Great.
Okay.
And I will share.
Perfect. Okay, Henry, maybe we just go to the next slide.
Yes. Moment.
There we go. So thank you all for having us. I know we come before you quite frequently with as our neighbors across the street. We are an exterior landmark, and we also individual landmark, and we also have a landmark interior, which is the Great Hall. these are two separate interior projects, both of which are outside of the interior designation, but both of which have impacts to our exterior. So we will be presenting them together. And as you'll see, they're related not only in terms of our institutional goals, but also because they can be seen at the same time. So that's why these two projects are bundled together. So we will have Buyer Blinderbell speak. That'll be Henry Miller and Michael Whetstone. And then Peterson Rich, who are the design architects for the 83rd Street entrance, are also here, and Nathan Rich will speak. So you'll hear four different speakers tonight, and we'll go through as fast as we can. We can go to the next slide, Henry. Thank you. So I think you're all familiar with our mission because we talk about it when we're here, but these projects are both mission critical for us in that they allow us to provide access to our visitors and sustainability for our building infrastructure. So the two projects are very much connected in that way. The first project is a restoration of the 83rd Street entrance, which was part of the original McKim, Mead and White design, as you'll see. And you'll also see that where the infill was, where the doors were closed. And the goal of this project is to be able to provide a fully accessible entrance from this location, from the plaza level at 83rd Street. And then there will be interior work to make a direct connection to the Great Hall. Currently, if you come to the Met, you know our only accessible entrance is at 81st Street. And so if you're a visitor that needs an elevator, you can't actually get directly to the Great Hall without going through a series of galleries. What we're hoping to do with this project is create an accessible entry off the plaza that allows you to access visitor amenities in a public realm. You walk right into a public space and be able to take a corridor up to a new elevator that will get you adjacent to the Great Hall, not right in the Great Hall, but adjacent to it. And this is really to help reduce congestion on our plaza and have a better entry experience for our visitors so that we will have a third point of entry off of the plaza. The second project is a replacement of our north side chiller plant, and I'll let the design team get into more detail on that. But this is incredibly significant for us, for the safety of our building, of our staff, and our ability to reduce our overall greenhouse gas emissions and energy usage. We've done some preliminary calculations. We're still in design, but we already know that our electrical consumption for this location will be reduced by 54% with this project, at least. So it's incredibly exciting for us to do that. The majority of the work is interior. We are essentially building a new mechanical plant inside the building above the old mechanical plant. But there is a part on the exterior where we're dealing with cooling towers and a screen wall, and you'll see that as part of the presentation. So if you're standing on 83rd Street looking at the museum, you would see these two projects together, and the design team will walk you through that. So I think I'll hand it over now to Henry Miller.
Thanks, Brett.
Yep.
So I'm just going to go over a little historical context for the museum. Some of this you all are probably well aware of at this point, but I think it's good context as we dive into these two projects. As Brett said, my name's Henry Miller. I'm a principal at Buyer Blinderbell Architects, and we're joined with Nathan Rich from PRO, Peterson Rich office, and Michael Whetstone, also a principal here at BBB. So just a quick view of the Met. A significant New York City building containing an encyclopedic collection of art. Exciting building to work on, certainly. It's composed of 21 wings built over a period of time, really starting with Wing A in 1880 and culminating with Wing U in 1990. It's about 2.1 million gross square foot of space and 600,000 square feet of galleries. Uniquely situated here, both along Fifth Avenue and in the park. You can see that here. And then also, as Brett touched on, it's a New York City landmark. This was designated in 1967, and that's the areas you see here in blue. And then it was added to in green, you can see by Kevin Roche Architects. And the interior space, which is the Great Hall, was designated in 1977, and it was actually designated a national landmark in 1984, or 86 rather. You can see here the wings along Fifth Avenue. The Great Hall was designed by Richard Morris Hunt, 1902. Then the flanking wings were McKim, Mead and White to complete the Fifth Avenue facade. And then you can see here in red that the two projects that we're here to talk about today, the 83rd Street entrance doors at the plaza, which is a restoration of 3 doors that were original to the museum as part of the McKimmey and White design. And then behind that, on axis with 83rd Street, you can see the infrastructure work that will be happening at wings X and W, which is the north side chiller plant cooling tower replacement. So going into the 83rd Street entrance, just looking now at that piece of this presentation. Also, as Brett mentioned, looking at trying to manage circulation and reduce crowding and queuing on the plaza is a big part of this project. You can see the existing plaza diagram here at the top with really 2 entrances, one at the main entrance at 82nd Street and the current accessible entrance at 81st Street, which leads you into a series of galleries, as Brett mentioned, will be supplemented by a new 83rd Street entrance, which is a more direct connection up to the visitor amenities and ticketing in the Great Hall. And we're calling this a restoration of the 3 doors at 83rd Street because it is literally a restoration of what was originally there. This is the 1906 McKimmey and White floor plan of that wing, which is wing AE, showing those 3 doors. So you can see them here marked by the red arrows off the plaza. And here's a Fifth Avenue elevation, McKimmey and White in 1904, showing the extent of the Fifth Avenue facade as they planned it, flanking the original 1902 Richard Morris Hunt building. And you can see here that these are the 3 doors shown in the elevation view, just to blow up here in case it's hard to see. And interesting to note, I think architecturally speaking, it was never a pure symmetrical condition between this wing E and the flanking wing J. You can see there's a pediment here, and there was actually no doors at 81st Street originally. Some historical photos showing the Met from 83rd Street and from the plaza. This was when there was actually a marquee in place over the doors. And here you see on the right, 2 of the doors, the 3rd being cut off, and some school kids there entering from the plaza, or what is now the plaza. Also, I think important to note that a proposal was made by Kevin Roche, John Dinkerloo Architects in 2001 to restore these doors. You can see this here. This was actually approved by Landmarks at that time. The work did not proceed at that time, but we are following on that same rationale here to restore the doors. So a little bit of the existing context and the historical fabric surrounding this proposal. This is the existing view at the plaza looking west from 83rd Street. You can see the single door there at wing E. Zooming into it a little bit, you can actually see the scars in a sense of the infill where those doors originally existed. So the stone is a slightly different color, both the Indiana limestone and what's Deer Isle granite at the base. And those 2 stones are very typical of the Met, certainly. And what we would be doing is really carefully removing that stone and restoring those 2 openings, which you can kind of see the ghost of here. Just also for context, looking at 81st Street, so this is the wing J on the other side of the big steps. You can see the single door here, and this is also a public entrance into the museum. Certainly the center doors, this is 82nd Street, the main entrance, looking at it from 82nd Street. And then zooming into that a little bit, we did want to pause on this just to look at the existing doors that are here. We are drawing from this set of doors for some architectural context and reference when we look at the new 83rd Street doors. And we'll come back to that in that context. You can see these are statuary bronze doors that have been carefully inset into the limestone frame of the original wing. So then just some architectural drawings showing the proposal. So here you can see the full Fifth Avenue facade existing and proposed. Below that, we are dashing in what will be a future proposed screen wall. And this is what my colleague Michael Whetstone will be talking about. This is the cooling towers in the distance. So you can see how they are related here on this 83rd Street axis. And then zooming in to Wing E, existing single door and the proposed restoration of the 3 doors at the plaza. And then zooming in a little bit more, this is the proposed demolition or dismantling drawing showing the removal of the non-original limestone and granite, as well as the door and the soffit and some light fixtures and signage. We did probe from the backside of this wall to look in, and the original openings are still there with the lintels. So this is really just a matter of taking out the facade, the fascia stone, and some backup brick, and we'll find those original openings intact. And then, Nathan, I'm going to hand it off to you to talk about the design.
Thanks, Henry and Brett, and thank you to the committee for the opportunity to talk about the project, which is, such a transformative opportunity for the Met. So you can see here that the doors are sort of taking form based on the historic precedent. And it'll be 3 sets of double doors that are recessed into the wall, much like the doors that you saw that already exists at the one door at 81st Street, and then taking a number of cues from the doors at 82nd Street. And I should say that as the design of this has taken shape, we've really tried to take our cues from what already exists at the museum with some tweaks and updates to make the building and the doors more accessible, because accessibility is such a major component of this. So you can see here that the doors have a small soffit up above where we're starting to indicate some signage. And at the base, there is an alignment between the Deer Isle granite and the bottom rail of the door. Next slide. And zooming in, we're trying to continue that alignment between the top rail of the door, the top frame of the door, and some of the adjacent coursing of the stone. And then in the detail, what you're starting to see is some of the material shift. So the materiality of each of the doors, the rails will be bronze. Again, taking our cues from the existing doors up at 82nd Street, where Henry sort of sat on that image for a minute. The doors themselves will be bronze. The transom panel up above the door will be bronze. And then in the section, you start to see that some of that bronze makes its way into a soffit over the door and a jamb extension to the side of the door. If you go to the next slide, you can see that in a little bit more detail. So I'll actually start with the plan detail at the left. The stone will be restored and it'll turn the corner into the sort of new opening here at about 6.5 inches. And then a roughly 18-inch jamb extension of bronze will come out as kind of a continuation of the frame of the door, creating a secondary frame inside that opening, which is allowing us to create a recessed push button for activation of the doors for accessibility purposes. The door itself then, like I said, is bronze with glass IGU in the middle. And then on the right side, the section detail showing that bronze transom over the top of the door, which is a location for signage, sort of recessed from the stone wall. And then that jamb extension also at the header, creating a soffit, which gives us, much like at the jamb, becomes a place for a push button for handicap accessibility. At the soffit, it becomes a place to create some lighting, to recess some lighting. So rather than having to recess into the stone, we're recessing into that bronze. Next slide. This is a little 3-dimensional drawing to indicate the relationship of the existing bronze door to the stone. You can see the way that the granite base continues, and then the limestone continues, and then turns the corner, and then that sort of bronze jamb extension comes out. Next slide. And comparing that to the door up at 82nd Street, which is the same material, does not have that extension because it doesn't have those technological requirements that we're accommodating, and for which we don't want to have to drill into the stone, the push button and the light. 3D view showing the sort of simple intervention of the bronze door, the bronze handle, and the glass panel with the signage up above, recessed back into the wall. And then next slide. On the oblique, you can sort of see the depth of the recess, about 24 inches in all, between the door and the front face of the stone. And then lastly, just a developing detail of the transom panel showing where the signage will sit. The idea is that the transom panel will match the door itself with some light bronze lettering, so it'll stand out. And with the with the soffit light overhead, the signage will be lit and legible as you approach the building from Fifth Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. So now, yeah, if we could unmute Michael Whetstone. Are you unmuted,
Okay.
Michael?
Yes, I am. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks very much. Good evening, committee members. I am Michael Whetstone. I'm also a principal at Beyer Bell Architect, and I will take you through part 2 of the presentation, which is the north side chiller plant replacement. Next slide, please. The project is located in Wings W and Wing X. They're both interior wings at the Met, built in the 1950s and 1960s. That's an area where actually much of the central plant mechanical infrastructure for the Met has been from the very beginning. This is just on the top is an end-to-end section of the Met from south to north, and highlighted in the color is where our project is. There is a chiller plant located in the basement and ground floor. There's some program space, and then there are cooling towers on the roof of the Grace Rainey Rogers Auditorium, but I'll show you in more detail in the next slide. This is a blow-up section. So you can see the areas where the project is occurring. The chiller plant, which generates 60% of the chilled water serving the museum-wide HVAC system, currently located in the cellar of Wing W. It's been there since early 1960s. That area is now flood-prone due to the climate change and the terrific increase in the single downpours of rain in Central Park, and the drainage system is not quite adequate to the task. And so to move critical infrastructure to a more resilient place, we're going to rebuild the chiller plant on the ground floor, just moving it one floor up. That will displace the museum's workshops for preparing exhibits, where they build exhibit cases, etc. We're going to move those shops up to the 3rd floor. We're going to infill 2 small light wells in order to create that space for the new workshops. And then the cooling towers are on the roof of the auditorium, replacing some older ones, and that is really the primary landmarks topic of this presentation. Next slide, please. This just shows in blue the 60% of the Met's 2.25 million square feet that are served by the chiller plant. The chiller plant makes chilled water. It's piped to all the HVAC systems on all the different wings, so that the galleries can be kept at a constant 70 degrees, 50% humidity, which is a museum standard, and requires quite a robust HVAC system. So I can tell you that everything I'm going to show you as far as the chiller plant and the equipment on the roof is really dictated by the requirements of the museum environment and the art conservation. Next slide, please. And as Brett said, because this equipment is quite old, it's not just in a flood-prone area, it's actually 40 years old and extremely obsolete major equipment that we're going to replace. But as we replace it with new equipment, state-of-the-art equipment, the new equipment will actually be much more efficient and will use less than half of the electricity than the current one. Just getting to the architecture. This is an aerial view and front view of the Met. You can see there are 2 arrays of cooling towers. The one on the left, that's the south side. That is a set of cooling towers that was approved by the commission and installed in 2012. And as you can see in the elevation, there is a louvered aluminum screen wall which shields the equipment. It's of course all set back more than 100 feet from the street, but that's the screen wall. And on the right are our outdated cooling towers that we're going to remove. The next slide, please. This shows the proposed design. So we're actually proposing to put a screen wall in front of these new cooling towers, very similar to what's on the left side of the building. Actually, slightly lower elevation, slight difference in plane due to the changes in the architecture, but roughly similar a set of screen walls matching what's on the south side. Next slide. Just the details showing the northeast corner of the museum. So these are the existing cooling towers, primarily on the roof of the Grace Rainey Rogers Auditorium. As you can see, they're all set back more than 100 feet from the street. The cooling towers are in 2 different levels, which is problematic for engineering. The water pressure by the time you get to the bottom is different. So our proposal is to put all the cooling towers on top of the auditorium, so we have the optimal, them all being on the same level. And of course, these cooling towers on the auditorium, sorry, Henry, you go to the next slide, please. This is our proposed design with the screen wall. These cooling towers in the screen wall are set back more than 100 feet from the street. I'll show you with our sightline views. They are not at all visible from the plaza and not at all visible from Fifth Avenue. But when you go down the corridor of the side street, 83rd Street, at a certain point down the block, the top of the screen wall starts to become visible. And that's the thing we're going to show you today. Just some existing condition photos. This is the roof of the auditorium and the current cooling towers that are there on top right now. And you can see the McKimmead and White pedimented roof, which is on wing E to the right. Next slide. These are just details of that roof. Here's that setback McKimmead and White classical pediment, which is directly over the entrance doors that Nathan and Henry showed you. Next slide, please. It's just a roof plan showing the cooling towers, the screen wall, and you can see in orange the 2 areas where we're going to infill a sunken light well to create more space for the museum's workshops. Those infills are not at all visible from the street, but we're including them in the presentation. Next slide. This is a detailed view. You can see in the light orange color the infill roofs, which will have unit skylights to bring light to the workshops below, and the cooling towers on the right, and on the left are photographs actually of the 2 infills that we're going to build in sunken light wells, none of which have to do with the historic architecture. Next slide. These are sections showing the cooling towers, the auditorium. You can see at the top section, the yellow is the 2 areas of the infill. Next slide is a detail. This is the auditorium. On top of the auditorium roof, we're going to build enormous plate girders spanning across the auditorium, and then the piping for the cooling towers has to be below, and the cooling towers go on top. And this whole vertical dimension and height assembly is really determined by mechanical and structural engineering requirements. Going to the next. A detail showing the screen wall as we're proposing it. It really just floats right above the back wall of the pedimented roof. Next, please. And our intent is for the materiality of the screen wall is to really match what's on the south side. The photographs on the top are the existing screen wall on the south side installed in 2012. It's an open louver, and our plan is to build this screen wall in the same material. And some details of how that works. The screen wall will be supported on the steel dunnage that supports the cooling towers and won't be attached in any way to the McKimmead and White building. But I just want to talk about the visibility. So I said before that both the south side and the north side cooling towers are set back more than 100 feet from the facade and are not visible at all from Fifth Avenue or the plaza. But they happen to line up with 81st Street on the left and with 83rd Street on the right. So in both conditions, the existing condition on the left and the proposed condition on the right, you get some visibility at the top of the screen wall as you get to a certain point down those 2 side streets. I'll just go to the next slide, please. This is the section on the south side. This is 81st Street. You can see with the red sight lines, someone standing on Fifth Avenue cannot see the screen wall or the cooling towers, but at a certain point going down 81st Street, one can, and here are some photographs. Photograph on the left is right at the corner of Fifth Avenue. And this is a certain point down the block where the screen wall becomes visible, and it's hard to see here, so I did a blow up of that photograph on the next slide. So you can see at a certain point, this dark area on top of the glass roof, that is the screen wall that's existing on the south side, rising above the roof. And we have a similar condition that we're proposing with that partial visibility on the north side. Next slide, please. So this is a section through 83rd Street showing the auditorium on the left and our proposed cooling towers on side. It's the same thing where on Fifth Avenue you can't see it, but at a certain point down 83rd Street you can. The roof line is different. It's a lower roof, and we have this pediment here, so the visibility is actually a little bit different. So I'll show you some of our photo montages and the mock-up. Next slide, please. So we just took a series of photos. You can see them marked on the plan on the right. So V1, right at Fifth Avenue in the corner. You can see you cannot see at all you'll not be able to see any of the screen wall. Going back about 50 feet to V2, this is where the screen wall just begins to pop up above the roof. There's a lot of trees in the way and it's hard to see, so I actually drew a red line on the lower photograph just to show where the roof is. Without the red line, it would actually be hard to see completely. But this is where you see just next to the pediment, the visibility starts to occur. And then going down about another 30 feet, this is just sort of a mid-level. View 3, you can start to see the roof of, sorry, view 3, yes, sorry, Henry. The visibility is just a little bit higher, just sort of nestled against the McKimbuton white roof, but of course still well below the pediment. Going to view 4, at this point, you can still see it, but it really starts to become in the distance and obscured by the trees. And then going to the next slide, by the time you get to Madison Avenue, the top photograph, or all the way to Park Avenue, there's just no way you can see any of it at all. So really, there's a visibility for a small stretch of 83rd Street at just the very top of the screen. Next slide, please. This is just we did a mock-up. Landmark staff asked us to build a scaffold, mocking up the exact height and position of a portion of the screen wall, which we built during the summer. And the photos that come next show you that same visibility. You can start to see, I blew up these photographs, but you can see in the closer view and the distant view, I highlighted in red where the top of that screen wall would be. And the ones at the bottom are actually blow-ups of the view. The actual photograph is at the top, so you can see it's quite in the distance. Next slide. And then we were also asked to look at the view from the north. So if you go all the way to the edge of the reservoir, that's where you might be able to see some of it. The building itself is higher than where the cooling towers are, but actually there's so many trees and pieces of the Met and building and skyline in the way that it's actually impossible to see where that really is. So we think the view from the north is practically imperceptible. And then just want to answer a couple of questions that you might have. One is, why are the cooling towers located exactly where they are on the roof? On the left, you can see what our first option was, which was to rotate the cooling towers so that they lined up more behind the pediment. And then option 2 is what we ended up with. And the reasons for that are purely structural. I'll explain what that is. At the left is the McKimbuton white floor plan. You can see the auditorium was originally this semicircular masonry structure with a massive bearing wall. In the 1950s, Voorhees, Walker, Foley, and Smith built the new Grace Rainey Rogers Auditorium. They extended the auditorium to the west to make it bigger. And in the structural diagram on the right, you can see the original red bearing wall was retained, except for where it's shown on the dashed line. And then in blue, you can see the new steel framing. The new steel framing supports the roof of the auditorium on the west side. So that steel framing is not able at all to support cooling tower loads, but the old masonry walls are. So the structural plan, as it is now, by the way, both the new and the old, is to put plate girders spanning across the bearing walls and put the cooling towers on top of that, because that's where they can be supported. That is why they are where they are. And the next question you might have is, why are the cooling towers quite tall? You can see on the left, the existing cooling towers, they're much lower. It's kind of a horizontal model called an induced draft cooling tower. And the ones on the right that we're proposing are quite a bit taller. The reason for that is really energy savings. The horizontal type cooling tower uses twice as much electricity as the tall kind, in fact, the New York City building energy code doesn't allow the low kind anymore, or what it says is that the cooling towers can't be any less efficient than this tall kind. The tall cooling towers make use of gravity, and that's why they're able to use less electricity. So for code and energy saving reasons, we have the taller cooling towers that you see here. You can no longer use the low ones. And then the last section of the presentation is just about the cooling towers. One more, please. The last is, I mentioned before that this is a place always where the Met had its central infrastructure. And there are many points in the past where this infrastructure was actually partially visible from the street. So just starting with this photograph on the left, by the way, this shows the 3 doors that Nathan and Richard Henry talked about. But you can see poking up behind is a smokestack, and that is, there was originally on the site of Wing W, where our chiller plant is, a McKim White designed a coal-fired boiler house. This is the section of it. It says McKim White on the bottom, built in 1911, and it actually had an enormously tall smokestack. So that was visible at a certain point. And then when the city went on to Con Ed steam and stopped making its own steam, the next slide, please. They built Wing W in the early 1960s. That also had cooling towers on top. You can see these cooling towers in the photograph circled in red right next to the McKim White pedimented roof. And then the generation before this, there were actually 2 enormous cooling towers in the 1980s on top of the auditorium. You can see them here. They had their own screen wall. They were much, much taller than what we are proposing and would have been much more visible. You can see in these photographs. So I think this is the last slide, but just to say that we wanted to show the very, I think, modest partial visibility of these cooling towers in the screen wall in the context of really what has always been some partially visible infrastructure at the Met in this location. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's the full presentation.
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Very clear, very thorough, very understandable. Thank you very much. Kevin, let's see if there's anybody in the from the public who would like to ask a question or make a comment.
If anyone from the public wishes to make a comment, please raise your virtual hand. I don't think I see anyone, so let's go to Elizabeth.
Elizabeth, or
Am I unmuted now?
yes.
Okay. Yes, thank you very much for a very thorough presentation. I think that the 3 doors are well designed. I like the materials, and I think they do reflect the more or less symmetry of the building. And are the doors around and frames, are they the same as the ones on the left-hand side of the main entrance? That, I guess that's the 81st Street side. Is the material the same?
Mr. Miller? Mr. Miller, you can answer.
Yes, I was just unmuted. Thank you. They are not symmetrical. So that was one reason I pointed out the fact that the 81st Street and the 83rd Street doors are not currently symmetrical. So we're not proposing to recreate that condition. And there's only 1 door at 81st Street versus 3 at 83rd Street. So we really took this opportunity to, design doors that would do what we need to do from an accessibility standpoint, from a security standpoint, at 83rd Street.
Okay, thank you.
I think I'm sorry, Elizabeth. I think, Henry, what Elizabeth was asking about was not so much number, but materiality.
The doors at 81st Street actually have 2 panels that close when the door is not in use. two opaque bronze panels, and those are essentially always open. And behind that, there's actually a glass door that's an aluminum frame, a little bit more nondescript and purely for function, I think. So I think that's where we're trying to make these doors fit in a little bit better with the materiality and with the glass.
Okay. And not being a pigeon, I wasn't quite aware of more or less the lack of symmetry and the appearance of the roof. I think you more or less made it disappear, and I assume that the cooling towers are not visible to people who are visiting the museum. You don't walk in and look at a cooling tower.
No, that's correct. They are on the roof and they are set back more than 100 feet. You cannot see them at all from Fifth Avenue or the plaza, and it's really just that limited stretch of walking down the side street, good distance down 83rd Street, where you could see the very top of the screen wall peeking above the roof.
Yeah. Well, then I think they're acceptable. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your excellent presentation. My question has to do with the panels above the three doors regarding signage. You said that the letters will be a bronze. Can you explain what the signs will be? I mean, I understand, given accessibility, that there has to be a way for people to know that there's an accessible entrance. Will all three entrances be accessible and used by the public to enter, or will that not be the case?
The doors, all three doors will be accessible, and all three will be potentially functional as an entrance. Although the idea is that both the doors will function both as entrance and exit. And the majority of the time, two of the doors will be for entrance and one of the doors will be for exit. But as with the doors up at 82nd Street, sometimes that relationship will be reversed depending on the scale of the crowds and the time of day. In terms of the signage, it's still taking shape precisely what that signage will be. You can tell by the way that we represented it that it was generic.
Mm-hmm.
And so at this point, we're just trying to represent what the material will be. But the precise language is still in development.
And any concept as far as what the size of the lettering will be?
Yeah, it was in the drawing itself.
I may have missed that.
Yeah, we could go back to it actually.
Thank you.
I think it's worth pulling up. But the intention is that the lettering the lettering is 4 inches tall, within this kind of 2 foot, almost 2 foot tall panel. So we're trying to keep it quite small and use that sort of transom with the light overhead, or the soffit with the light overhead, to light the sign. We might want to unmute Brett from the museum in case she wants to speak more about the signage plan.
There we go. Sorry, I was still muted. Thank you for the question. I think, Nathan, you answered it beautifully. I think signage is always challenging for us, and we wanted to come with a holistic presentation to you all that showed how signage would be integrated into the doors. And so what we're proposing here, this size and this materiality, is what we would do. You know, it will say something about entrance to the Met, and we have the blade, and similarly to how we use the 81st Street side where we have an accessibility symbol, it'll be something like that. I think we're still working through the details of that, and if we want to make any change to this or come back holistically with an approach to signage, we would do that as a separate hearing with you all and come before you all too. In terms of timing, we just wanted to make sure that we, acknowledge there will be signs over the door, and if this is all we end up doing, we're okay with this too, having these signs. So it'll say something about entrance to the Met in a similar way it does on the other side.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Those were my questions.
Michelle?
Thank you. Referring to this image that you have on the screen now, this is a rendering. And what did you say the materials of the doors were?
It's a bronze. It's sort of a darkened patinaed bronze.
Like a black or dark brown?
Yeah, it's kind of ends up being a dark gray. The idea is to match it to the material that's on the 82nd Street doors, and there's a photo of that earlier in the deck, actually.
But now there was an original door here. What was the original?
I don't know if we know what the original was. We know that bronze is a very typical materiality for buildings of that era. And, you know, the selection of bronze, I think, was made with that consideration in mind.
Which I'm sure that's true. It's actually the glass I'm concerned about. You have no image of what that door was originally?
We have not been able to find an image of that. But I think we also wanted to, you know, draw from the historical context, but provide a door that, you know, also allowed us to have visibility through the panel, you know, for visitor access, visual access, and also for security, and to make sure that there's always a visible connection from exterior to interior.
So this door that you're showing that exists on 82nd Street has a clear glass transom above it. And this is clear glass versus frosted in the other drawing? Or is that just the way you depicted glass?
It's intended to be clear glass.
So the new doors will be clear glass, but they do not have a transom, or they do?
They don't have a glass transom. They have the bronze transom, which kind of gives us a location for signage. And also the interior ceiling is a little bit lower than the exterior opening is.
So if you need signage on 3 doors on that side, why do you not need signage on 1 door on the 82nd Street side?
Well, on the 81st Street side, actually, which I think
81st.
is a useful precedent, there, yeah. There is signage. You can see that sort of red, that red sign, which feels a little bit more temporary than what we're proposing at 83rd Street. So we're taking our cues from this in terms of locating the signage, trying to keep it within the opening rather than adding something new elsewhere on the exterior of the building.
So that red banner, for example, comes down and is changed with each exhibition?
No, that red band that stays. That's magnetic and just on top of the existing.
Oh, so it's like a plastic magnet?
Yeah, so we're not proposing to do that on the 83rd Street side, which is why we're proposing to do something permanent in the transom.
Right. Can you go back to 83rd, because there's a vertical blackened piece there that no, the slide that was on the screen when I came on the call.
Yeah. I can answer what that is.
Yeah, there was a black, yeah, what
Yeah.
is that?
So that's a blade. We have one at the 81st, the vertical blade, I think. Is it the thing that's dashed in? Maybe in the rendering we can show.
Yeah, I'm getting there. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, where
So
the
that's
small
not-
figure is.
That's there. That's not part of the proposal. Sorry, I realized that's not clear in this rendering. That's a blade sign that we have at both 81st and next to this store that was approved as part of the Plaza project that we're showing it for context. It's already there.
And is that going to have something directional or introducing what's on view? What's meant to go on that?
I think we don't know yet. There's signage on it now. We would use a similar size and scale of what's there now. We don't quite know yet what's going on all the signage. It's something we want to look at holistically. We've heard comments about this as we come before community groups and landmarks about a holistic approach to signage, which we want to take, but it will take quite amount. Oh, there it is. Sorry. Yeah. So that's what it looks like now. So it'd be something similar to that. Right now we use this if you've been to an event in Grace Rainey Rogers after hours, you may have walked through this door. We open these doors and you walk through the staff cafeteria right now to get to Grace Rainey Rogers. So that's what that signage is indicating right now.
So are you thinking that you plan to come back to us to finalize all of the signage?
So our plan is that we feel comfortable with the doors and the signs above them as they are now. And if that was all we did, we would be okay with that. I think there is ambition for us to look at signage holistically in our landmark exterior and interior, right? When we came before you for the digital displays, that was an issue as well. We were dealing like kind of with the COVID crisis, but now we want to look holistically at signage. It's going to take us some time and we will do that. And we will definitely come back to you all. That will be a public hearing.
Okay, great. And will that include lighting above the signs?
Well, so for this proposal, we are proposing to have a small light above each door. It's similar to what is above the door now. Actually, it's just recessed. And so that would be part of this approval, that small lighting on the signage itself. If we were to propose anything new, that would be part of that proposal too.
Okay, I asked because I think in light of what's happening on the plaza, you know, when you did that redesign of the plaza,
Yeah.
and you have a different set of, you have extra trees and you wanted tables and chairs and you have not one horizontal fountain, but 2 or 3 fountains. And that plaza is very, very busy now. I'm not sure it solved any of your crowding problems, which was the original point of it. People still like to be on the steps, and I think that will always remain, and that's part of the charm of it all.
Yeah.
Maybe it'd be a good idea to get rid of all that. But I can see all the tables and chairs, the full grown trees, which then block the front facade of this beautiful building to start with. And then having 3 doors with lighting and signage and a signage, you know, post in the middle. There's a lot of action going on there, and I'm not so sure it's necessary. So, and also, it may not be a formal part of this proposal, but is it under consideration where you would be scaling in the tables and chairs that you originally planned for out there?
No, we are not proposing.
You plan to keep that?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me just go to the water cooler. You're basically replacing, but it's not visible.
That's correct. The cooling towers are the screen wall in front of the cooling towers is partially visible down the side street, 83rd Street. But certainly none of it is visible. None of the rooftop equipment is visible at all from Fifth Avenue or the plaza.
Okay, so even though you have proposed a new configuration, that configuration is behind that wall, privacy wall.
Correct.
Okay, and what about the 2 orange ones on the right side of the screen in the back? Is that not part of this?
Yeah, that's not part of it. Those are existing cooling towers that have been there on the part of the American wing, and they are also not visible, but those are existing.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sarah?
Hi. Since I haven't seen the presentation, I won't be voting on this item, but so I don't have any questions right now. Thank you.
John?
I'm sorry, I don't have any questions either.
Jane?
Thank you. I just wanted to reiterate what David Halpern said. It was a very clear and very understandable presentation. I especially loved all the drawings that showed the evolution of the current footprint of the museum, the dates for all the various wings. It was like being in an art history class, quite frankly, or maybe an architectural history class. So thank you for that. I'm going to keep these slides as a point of reference for years to come. I have no qualms with this. I think the doors are very discreet and they're beautifully done. And I will support the application for both the doors and the chiller element. Thank you.
Kimberly?
Thank you. Yeah, to reiterate what Jane just said, I have no concerns about either the additional door at 83rd Street or the cooling tower. It seems reasonable to me. Thank you for the presentation.
Marco?
Thank you. The project that you presented to us, they said you are claiming sustainability and accessibility. And in that part, I'm going to comment. They said that you are planning or you're proposed to reduce the consumption of the energy 54%. Is that correct? And this reduction you compare with who? Or what is the parameter that you compare?
Sure. It is a comparison of the electricity use of the existing current Northside chiller plant and our mechanical engineer's model of how much electricity the new proposed replacement chiller plant will use. So it is a reduction based on the existing mechanical system to the proposed mechanical system.
Are you aware that you have to compare with a benchmark that the building has?
Well, this building is actually as a historic landmark is exempt from energy codes, but as a matter of policy, we try to make it as sustainable as possible. So there's no benchmark for this. And in addition, the HVAC systems for museums have a much higher requirement for maintaining the humidity all through the winter, actually are quite energy intensive, and so it's a slightly a bit of a separate category of use than a typical benchmark for a commercial building.
You're absolutely right. This is an individual landmark and is exempt. However, you as a moral obligation, as an ethical obligation, you have to try to reduce as much as you can the loads. So that is the bottom line right here. There is the thermal loads, it's nothing more. The other one, if you replace the brand name for one equipment to another one, I think is baseless in that part. But what I'm going is directly is my concern is the materials. The openings, I think you demonstrate that was existent, and I do not have a problem. I think it makes sense. The accessibility, I think it makes a lot of sense what you described, but the materials not. Why? Because in the application that was approved that you mentioned in 2001, it makes more sense. It was wood that was presented. I know that you have a big dilemma. You cannot copy what the other professional did. I think I understand you very well, that part. For that part, you have to look at all the choices. Otherwise, you will want to get in trouble if you copy. So the point is, it should be used other wood, which is more traditional, and from the point of view of sustainability is even better, because having the two materials, steel and glass, you put one of the worst materials from the point of sustainability. And the issue is you have thermal breach with metals, and you have extremely weak when you use glass. So you are losing energy incessantly in that part. So my concern is basically is the traditional materials. And the traditional materials is wood, not metal, you can call bronze, whatever you want, and glass. I think that is my only concern, because the issue of the cooling tower, I think is perfectly fine. Whatever you need, you have to put it, you have to install it. If it is visible minimum from part of the distance, it's perfectly fine. So I don't comment on that because we don't have the benchmark. So then basically it would change dramatically the size of the equipment. But, however, since the main part of our review is the design and the traditional materials, so I comment in that direction. The traditional material doesn't match, and I think is my major concern. Thank you.
Anthony and David?
Anthony's next.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you, David. A wonderful presentation. I have absolutely no objection to it in any way. The only question I have actually has to do with the whether or not you all are going to think about doing something similar at the 81st Street door. But that's just not adding two more doors to it, but even just an alteration to that door so that it would be more like the new doors at 83rd.
I can answer that question, Chairman. I think we would love to in the future. We learned why McKim, and White didn't do it originally because we actually have a large grade change over the floor blocks. And so why they had the doors where they did originally is because it was level with the interior, whereas at the 81st Street side, if you walked in those doors, you actually have to go down. So it's a bit more complicated for us to reconfigure that area. Our hope would be to do something like this in the future there, but we don't have funding. It's not on our immediate plans, but we would very much like to improve that on the outside and the inside when we can.
Great, thanks.
Thank you, Anthony. I think I'm with the majority when I say it was excellently done project. As far as the mechanical side goes, I guess we're all concerned with sustainability, but we're looking at context and appropriateness. From my point of view, I have great faith that the Metropolitan Museum and its design team is doing the best they can from a sustainability and an efficiency point of view. And I would hate to think that anybody would vote no on this because of that consideration. As far as the doors go, I think that they're absolutely appropriate in the context that you explained them. And you need the visibility and you need the access. I also think that the signage is going to be just fine given the size of the letters and the light bronze on the dark bronze. So in summary, I'm hopeful that somebody will propose a resolution that's favorable. Does anybody want to make a resolution?
Move to approve?
Yes. I think I heard somebody move to approve.
Yes, I did. Anthony.
Yes, thank you, Anthony. And
No
do I have a second? Everybody is so quiet tonight. Do I have a
I
second?
think Gail has seconded.
Thank you, Gail. So,
And Kimberly.
Kevin, can you please call the roll?
Okay, I'm going to unmute everyone.
David, one of the issues is we're still on screen share. That's why everyone was so quiet.
Well, let's eliminate the screen share so we can be less quiet.
Elizabeth,
Yes,
Gail,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes,
Anthony,
Yes.
David,
Yes,
Sean,
Yes.
Jane,
Yes.
Kimberly,
Yes.
Marco.
Abstain.
Okay, so moving along to item two. Item two is, excuse me, is 593 Park Avenue in the Upper East Side Historic District. Walter B. Melvin Architects are the applicants. This is a neo-Gothic building designed by Henry Pelton and Allen and Collins, who were wonderful architects, and constructed in 1920 to 1922. And this particular application is for exterior lighting fixtures at the sanctuary and the bell tower. And who is here from? Okay, great. So let's share and get going.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Megan Rispoli Kim. I'm with Walter B. Melvin Architects. Thank you for the opportunity to present this project. Bruce Barton from our office is also here, as is Peter Milligan for the church. We've worked with the church for about 13 years now on their various restoration and repair efforts. As was mentioned, this church was designed by Henry C. Pelton with Allen and Collins, and it was constructed between 1920 and 1922. It was originally Park Avenue Baptist Church, commissioned largely by John D. Rockefeller Jr. That congregation only stayed for a few years before they moved up to Riverside Church around 1930. And Central Presbyterian Church has been there ever since. It is not an individual landmark, but it is part of the Upper East Side Historic District. It's located at the corner of Park Avenue and East 64th Street. Directly adjacent to the church are two 5-story altered or contemporary row houses, and further to the south along Park Avenue is the church and event space at 583 Park Avenue. Some community members might remember that for a number of years there was a sidewalk bridge up at the church as a precaution, but in 2017 the church embarked on an extensive restoration project that went through 2020. They did masonry repairs and cleaning. They did extensive stained glass restoration. They also completely deconstructed and reconstructed their bell tower. Additionally, they had new bronze bells cast in France because Rockefeller had moved the original bells up to Riverside Church. And this effort was honored with multiple preservation awards, including a stewardship award from the Friends of the Upper East Side Historic Districts. And the last component of the project, several years in the making now, has been to install some exterior lighting at the church to highlight the architecture at the sanctuary monumental windows, as well as light the bells and the bell towers. We first approached Landmarks, the Landmarks Commission in 2019, and they've indicated support for the project, especially as over the years the project has been refined and pared down. And they ultimately determined that this fell just outside of their draft rules, and so would need to go through this public hearing process. It's worth noting, I think, that the church used to have lighting at their monumental sanctuary window at the main west facade. This is a Google Street View image from 2009 and from 2016. There were stucco wells between the tripartite window with scuppers, and there were spotlights attached to those wells. It was a great home for pigeons, but it was removed during the restoration project as a non-original element. And so the church has retained lighting designer L'Observatoire International to design lighting for them. And what they're currently proposing is to light the sanctuary windows at the west and north facades, as well as at different levels of the bell tower, including the inside, to create an even lighting effect. And this is a typical detail. All of the light fixtures are LED strip lights. They would need to be installed at sloped sills. Some locations there would just be one light fixture. Other locations there would need to be 2 light fixtures, and per the lighting designer, they need to be raised to level and have an adjustable bracket. So we're proposing to make a shim a metal shim to raise them to horizontal. The shim would probably be discontinuous to allow for water drainage. And then there would be a continuous glare shield across the fixture. And these brackets and glare shields could be painted a custom color to blend in with the lines. This is a mock-up that we did for LPC last year. It was done in painted plywood and then hung from the openings with wires. So it's actually about twice as large as it would need to be in metal, or in other words, the final metal solution would be half as large. And then in the photo on the right, as you start to walk down Park Avenue, it already starts to disappear. This is just a basic illustration, but at the west tripartite window, there'd be pairs of light fixtures. We would take advantage of an existing conduit penetration on the right side. And then it's a little bit hard to see, but those deep pilasters actually have voids. So we could use the voids to run wiring or conduit. And then at the north facade, there would be pairs of light fixtures. Again, these would require new penetrations through the wall into the sanctuary. And we ideally would like to minimize the number of penetrations as potential points of water infiltration, and then are proposing to link the light fixtures with exterior wiring or conduit. And while we understand the Landmarks Commission doesn't regulate lighting per se, I did want to mention that these are quite discrete light fixtures. Even in their brackets, they're only about 2 inches tall and 1 inch wide. And we've used that paint color on the right for other elements to blend into the limestone across the church, which has been pretty successful. And I think that's about it from me. A lot of thought has gone into designing a lighting scheme that accomplishes the church's goals, but is also as minimal and unobtrusive as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, first, do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on this application? I don't see anyone, so Kevin, maybe from back to front this time?
Marco?
Thank you. I think your proposal, I think, is perfectly fine, and because it brings up some architectural elements, and I think it makes nicer. The only part that I probably a little bit concerned, because since you mentioned, is the penetration that creates some leakage inside of the facility. And once you have these kind of problems, it's a nightmare for everybody. For the designer, for the contractor, for the church. And I think that probably made me concerned a little bit. But pretty much the rest of the proposal is well done. And I think I will support your application. If you comment in that part of how do you going to control the penetrations or minimize or undermine or reduce, that I will appreciate. But still, in any event, I will support this application. Thank you.
Marco, yes, we're certainly mindful of the fact that a poorly done penetration could be a point of water infiltration. The penetrations would go into their very lovely original sanctuary. So to that point, we would proposed to be making the penetrations on a vertical surface as opposed to a horizontal surface like the sill.
Yeah, it's one.
Yeah, and the church has a longtime contractor in West New York Restoration, and
Yeah, that's good.
working with them to make sure that the hole is as watertight as possible.
Very smart decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kimberly?
All right, yes, thank you so much for the presentation. Overall, I have no concerns about the changes due to light. The one thing, as I was preparing for this committee meeting and reviewing it now, I'm a little confused about the slide with the pigeons. Were we saying that there was damage due to the pigeon being or having access to parts of the facade? Could you point out for me like where that problem was being caused and explain one more time how we're fixing it?
So when we started the restoration project in 2017, there was a lighting well at this large west window. It's a non-original element. It did hide light fixtures, but it also created a place where pigeons like to roost and make nests, and for both the pigeon reason, but more importantly that it was a non-original element and the church was doing, this really extensive restoration that was removed. But I just wanted to make the point that there was a precedent at the church for lighting the windows, and the proposal now we hope is much better considered.
Got it. Thank you for humoring my question. I can support this application. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jane?
Thank you. I can support the application. I was especially fascinated by a little bit of the history of the church, the Rockefeller connection. This is what I love about the Landmarks Committee on the Upper East Side. Thank you.
John?
I think the lighting changes look very attractive, and I have no questions.
Sarah?
I have, thank you for the presentation. I have no questions, and I would like to support this application.
Michelle?
Thank you for the presentation. Unfortunately, I found it very difficult to hear. I found your volume very low and much lower than everybody else's. So I missed a lot. And I'm probably going to have to abstain because I don't want to take you backwards. I let Kevin know that it was too low. I don't know if you could have done anything about it. So I will probably abstain because I don't have enough information, but I do want to ask one question. The picture of the front facade that has the bright yellow, you said that was painted wood to give you an indication of color. What was that? I'm sorry, I missed it.
Was it this photo?
No, it was the slide when the front, the main entrance of the church was lit up. That on the left. What is that?
This was a mock-up that we prepared for the Landmarks Commission last year.
Your volume is much better now.
I'm just leaning forward. I'm
Thank
sorry
you.
about that.
Okay, yeah.
This was a mock-up that we had prepared for the Landmarks Commission, and the final solution for the supports and glare shields would be in metal, but this was very preliminary. It was just done in painted plywood. So these are about twice as large as the final metal supports would be.
But I'm not understanding where the metal relates to the lighting. In other words, is this your aim to be the final visual of the lighting, no matter your plan to attain that? Is this the look you're going for?
This is the look the church is going for at just one bay. So
which bay is this? Is this the Park Avenue bay?
This is the south bay of the bell tower that you could see from Park Avenue, and there are 8 bays.
Oh, so this is up at the bell tower. Oh,
I see. Up at the bell tower, yes.
Okay, and you're doing this on each of the bays of the bell tower.
Correct.
And you're getting this lighting using what?
LED strip lights.
LED strip lights.
Yes.
And they'll give you one overall look like that, not a shaded look?
The church has worked with their lighting designer to get an even effect, and the smaller openings would have one LED strip light. The larger openings would have a pair of strip lights to wash the architecture more evenly, and then there would also be some concealed lights at the interior.
And this is only at the bell tower, because as I look at the roof, there are other windows on that facade. But this is only the bell tower.
Correct. So at one point in time, the church was entertaining a much more extensive application, but right now they're proposing to just light the various sides of the bell tower, the large window at the Park Avenue facade, and then the large windows at the 64th Street facade.
Of which there are 5. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. That answers my question. Thank you very much.
Gail?
Thank you for the presentation, and I will support your application.
Elizabeth?
I think if you're going to do this lighting plan, this is probably a good and thoughtful way to do it. And I will support it, although I would prefer that you forgot the idea of lighting up your building this way.
David?
I think the glow, particularly from the bell tower, will be quite beautiful as long as the lighting is well done and it's an appropriate level of illumination. And as Michelle questioned it, that it's relatively even, it's relatively soft, and I'm going on the basis that as the architects, you know what you're doing in terms of penetrating, and that your lighting consultant will be doing the right final result with the quality of the lighting. So it has my support.
Thank you, David. And just one question is, how has the church, or have you all looked at the what the effect will be from within on either a gloomy day or in fact in the evening?
That I'm not sure about. If Bruce or Peter from the church knows more about studies that have been done with l'Observatoire, please jump in.
I'm not sure I understand the question. And if on a cloudy day, if from within the building?
Yeah, from within the building. In other words, the lights are on, you're
Right.
inside. Do they illuminate your windows?
Do the interior lights illuminate the windows?
No. Do the
No.
lights that
Do
you
the
are proposing outside put some light into the building?
We would not expect, because the location of the lights, we wouldn't expect them to illuminate the stained glass windows much from the perspective of the inside. But for the especially because if one is inside the building, the inside lights would have to be on. And so that would be, the inside lights would be brighter than these exterior lights.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
And I believe the intention is just to have the exterior lighting on at night. This wouldn't
Correct.
be lighting where lighting of the stained glass is, helpful for the interior effect.
That's fine. And then and so I guess we're looking for a resolution, I think probably to approve. Marco?
I would like to put a motion. The motion is to approve as presented. Anybody can
Very good,
second?
thank you.
Second.
Okay.
David and Gail have David and Gail have seconded. So I guess we run through from Marco to Elizabeth.
Did we stop the screen? Oh, thank you.
Marco,
Yes.
Kimberly,
Yes.
Jane,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Anthony,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Michelle,
No.
Gail,
Yes.
Elizabeth,
Sort of, yes.
Okay. The next item is 1185 Park Avenue, expanded Carnegie Hall Historic District. Joshua Brand von Brenner, a neo-Gothic style building designed by Schwartz and Gross and constructed in 1928, 1929. Application is to remove an existing half window and an existing AC louver in the maid's room and replace it with a full louver in the entire window opening. So, Mr. Brand von Brenner, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
You got it. Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Volume okay?
Yes.
Good, great. Thank you very much for having me here this evening. I am representing Kevin Cruz, who is a shareholder at 1185 Park Avenue, owns apartment 14L, which goes from the interior courtyard to 94th Street. The building designed by Schwartz and Gross and built in 1928 to 1929 on the east side of Park Avenue from 93rd to 94th. The building is in the district. It is well known as one of a few buildings in New York with a full interior courtyard. So this apartment, it's a 3-bedroom apartment. The apartments view onto the courtyard and the public spaces view onto the street. Just in real short, I renovated this apartment for the same client in 2007. At that time, we installed a central air conditioning system through a window louver on 94th Street that air conditioned the public rooms. The bedrooms were air conditioned through existing through-wall openings with little teeny mini through-wall, sort of the old casement air conditioners that are no longer manufactured. The owner actually, at that time in 2007, we knew that they had been discontinued, purchased several extra units, and has been nursing his air conditioning units for the intervening years. They have all failed at this point, so there is no way to do an air conditioner to utilize the same existing openings on the courtyard side. The brick openings, as you'll see shortly when I scroll through, go through a decorative brick course. So the proposal here is to add a second central unit through the same window that faces 94th Street, pardon me, not 14th Street. So this is the designation map and the 1940s tax photo. Let's see, why is my page down? No, there. Historic Sanborn map and a location map showing the pale red is the building, the bright red is the apartment on the 14th floor spanning from 94th Street into the courtyard. This is a view from the corner of Park Avenue looking southeast. So that's the primary facade with the grand entrance into the courtyard, and you can see that is the window in question. The window that we're proposing to modify is in a maid's room on the 14th floor. A maid's it's basically now a utility room, a storage room. And this is looking from 95th Street, 94th Street. That is a typo. Looking west, and that is the unit. There you can see the existing. This is the existing half louver that we installed in 2007 with a staff level approval from Landmarks and building department approval, of course. And This is a roof plan, again, showing the unit spanning from street side to courtyard side. This is a unit plan of the apartment. That's the location of the existing through-wall condenser, where we're proposing to put a second through-wall condenser. Currently, that through-wall condenser cools the public rooms. These are the 3 bedrooms that face the courtyard with these little teeny antiquated through-wall units that, as you can see, are going through a kind of a triglyph and metope sort of abstracted brick course, detail course. So this is an elevation view in red, showing the window in question is in red with the half louver above. It's a double hung window. So there's a half louver above and then a baby sash below. This is the courtyard. This is the courtyard view with the 3 through-wall air conditioners that we would remove and patch the brick to match that decorative string course or frieze around the wall. These are elevations showing the existing louver with the baby sash below, and then the full louvered opening next to it. This is a section detail showing the installation of the units. And a detail, this is the window would be built and installed by Skyline Windows, a compliant window that matches the building standard, the building master plan, and a louver detail on a louver cut sheet on the left. This shows an existing window inside the courtyard that is very, very similar, with a small bathroom window next door, the fully louvered window adjacent to it with sort of an applied muntin in front of it, which is a building requirement. So we would have the muntin in front, and then the full louvers behind, all painted black to match the building standard. And then the last thing I would show is this is on the 94th Street facade at the first floor. These windows are both on the first floor. The street is pitching down, so this is actually a basement level. But both these windows, these are existing windows on the first floor. Was unable to determine the date at which their approval, whether it predates the designation or whether it was done with approval. But these windows show a similar full louver at pedestrian level, at eye level, much more visible than our window, which is up on the 14th floor. And with that, I will be quiet.
Okay, thank you for a clear presentation.
Thank you.
Is there anyone from the public who would like to question or comment on this application? So let's go to the committee, starting with Elizabeth.
Could you put this picture back of the larger of the existing and the proposed next to each other, please?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
I should also say that this apartment is somewhat of an anomaly in that it has a service room that actually faces a street. When you look into most of the unit plans of the big grand apartment buildings on Park Avenue, they almost always only have public rooms facing the street, and then a maid's room, a service room like this would almost always be facing either a side yard or a rear yard. So this is kind of it's an unusual because the unit plan goes clear through the building. It's got some, it's unusual to have a service window like this facing a street. It just does not seem to happen often in New York.
Yeah. I can't say I feel that a louvered window is appropriate, particularly to this building. I see what your problem is, but I will think about this. But I'm not enthusiastic.
Lo Vanderbalk has a question. Lo.
Yes, this is Lo Vanderbalk speaking on behalf of Carnegie Hill Neighbors. I'm sorry, I had trouble showing my reaction. So apologize for that. I think that what's done on the inner court is really fantastic, removing those units and restoring the banding. There's some hesitation on what's being done on the outside here. On the other hand, what are the choices that are practical and reasonable? Maybe the only amelioration that might be introduced, and I don't know if that's possible, is to make the mullions stand out dark, which they do, and then the what's inside the mullions, if that could be lightened in some way so that it looks like more like a regular window than the louvered version. So that would be our assessment. But we don't see there's a huge amount of choice. It's just a matter of making it look slightly better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gail?
I assume the master plan is for 6/6 windows. And when I look at the louvers, I mean, they just stand out as being very unattractive, and they draw your eye, to them. I do not know what other options there are regarding the air conditioning, but is it not possible to go through the facade if there are more air conditioners that are installed in that manner? Because I think that they're not particularly attractive. I'm surprised that air conditioners are allowed to, in this type of a building, to even be through the bricks at the front facing the street versus inside. But have all other potential options been explored, or is this the least cost-effective way of doing it? Which I can also appreciate.
Really the only way. So other units in the building do have through-all air conditioners, as you can see here. But because we have on both sides of the building, we have the decorative course. There would be no way to do a through-wall unless it were between windows, which I don't think would be allowed as well. So we're sort of between a rock and a hard place.
Thank you.
Michelle?
Yeah, thank you. Couple of questions. There is a way to solve that. I had this issue in my apartment, and it could be installed on the side, however, with the unit not projecting out, but projecting into the room, and only the louvers appearing in the brickwork between two windows, as opposed to, that's right, exactly where your arrow is. And if the unit itself did not project out, the louvers, the outside would be minimally noticed, especially on the 14th floor. So that is a solution. My question is, the louvers that are appearing through the window in your proposal, are those louvers of the air conditioning unit? That's the central unit?
So if I can go back to the section detail, so the units sit behind a separate architectural louver. So the units do not come with this is the unit. The units have a grill, but it's an unacceptable grill. So we put a duct sleeve and then attach it to, and I use this word hesitatingly, but a nicer looking louver. So that's what this reliable louver is.
That exterior louver is.
That's a so-called architectural louver, which is considered to be better looking than the louver that comes with the machine.
And how is that servicing a central air through the rest of the apartment? Have you run ductwork?
Yeah, well, so if I can just toggle back to the plan. The two condensers, one, the refrigerant lines run to an air handler up in this closet that's above that closet, and then there's ductwork that runs out to these rooms. The new one, the refrigerant lines will be run above the ceiling to an air handler in this hallway, and then ductwork is passed above the closets, the sort of interior closets, and then through all registers into the 3 bedrooms. So it's a split. It's a split system with the condensers in the window and then air handlers located above secondary spaces.
So you're not using the system that you put in 2007 for the public areas?
We are.
That's like it's going through the whole apartment.
No, so the system that we put in 2007 is the upper half of the window and has an air handler that services the dining room and the living room. Where effectively we're just maintaining that system and then putting a second condenser below the existing condenser in the window.
I see what you're doing.
That's why if I go to sorry, now I went too fast. Boy, it's skipping slides. Sorry. There. So this is the existing with the louver above, the 2007 landmarks approved
You're going to do
louver
it below as well.
And then we're gonna full window it, and that's what landmarks rules do not allow staff level approval for the double louver.
Right.
Staff level will approve this, but not this.
Right, I get it. Does the master plan of this building have wood windows? Because you're doing skylight, those are metal, those are aluminum windows.
Yes, the building master plan, this building master plan is one of the earliest master plans I think that landmarks approved. It is very sketchy, but it is for aluminum, thermally broken insulated aluminum replacement windows.
Oh, what a pity for that gorgeous building. That would never have been approved today.
The skyline window is the approved window for this building, or meets the building approval for the master plan. The master plan is mute on louvers like this, though.
I realize. Let me ask you one last question about the master plan. Does it specify skyline, or does it specify a type of window and the materials?
I don't believe it specifies skyline. I know that Skyline's window meets the criteria. I'm sure Skyline and Panorama both meet the window. Skyline is not a mandated vendor at this building. I don't.
So there are others. I ask because there are some manufacturers that have the mullion profiles that are more similar to the original. And I'm even in aluminum, I'm sure Skyline is not one of them. I'll tell you,
Skyline, I can, if you wait, I'm sorry, not to interrupt. This is let me see where so it's a trapezoidal, it's not just a flat bar. It's not it's not like a flat extrusion with double sticky tape. It's a trapezoidal mullion. I think this is the, I'm sorry to say, this is the approved Muntin. This is a landmarks approved Muntin for this building, I believe. As is the historic. This is the panning that's been approved for the building. I mean, this is a window that has been installed in this building multiple times.
Well, I'm on the 14th floor. I mean, I'm not that hysterical over it, but I think that there's a better solution. And I think in this case, it's either the split system that just hangs near the ceiling in each of the rooms so that you can remove an outside air conditioner, or installing through the brick air conditioners, but not in any decorative element of the building, but in the middle, and making the grate flush with the brick and the protrusion on the interior. So I'm a little bit,
If I could just comment on that for one second. So the systems that would allow you to have an independent blower in each room, those are the VRFs, the BFR systems like by Mitsubishi and Daikin, that kind of thing, they do not make a through wall or a through window condenser, unfortunately. So we're stuck with a conventional ducted split system. We can't have a variable flow refrigerant system here. The thing I would point out is that on this facade, there are lots of air conditioners, both in windows and below windows. There's not a single air conditioner through the wall, as you suggest, between windows. So
Well,
you
but
can
not
see,
every floor has a decorative element.
but you can see there's lots of things in windows. There's
Yeah, well, I don't think that's ideal. I'm not proposing that that's
Yeah.
ideal. I was just looking for a way to preserve the decorative element on the 14th floor.
Yeah, but I think if we went through here, we would be arguably more obtrusive than in the window.
No, it wouldn't be seen. I haven't, not by choice necessarily, but it was a solution that we came to. At any rate, and what about split systems that are just hot and cold? You know, they're temperature adjusted and they just go near the ceiling. Do they have to be vented to the outside? I don't think so.
Yeah, so those are variable flow refrigerant, and they have a blower in the room, and then they have a condenser. Somewhere you need outside air to condense the refrigerant to exchange the hot air. So when you have a terrace or a rooftop, you can park a variable flow refrigerant condenser, but when you're in a middle floor like this, there's nowhere to put a Mitsubishi and Daikin and the Fujitsu, the companies that make the variable flow refrigerant condensers, don't make a through wall or a through window version. They have to be fully outside on a shelf. So
okay, I appreciate that. I have to think about this. I'm not thrilled with the
Understood. Thank you.
skyline window, and there are
Yeah,
things that bother me, but let me think about it. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Sarah?
Hi, thank you for this presentation. And like my colleagues, I think the changes you're making to the courtyard openings, patching them up is great. With regard to the full window louver, I was wondering if maybe painting the louvers a different color might be helpful. I understand that the black is meant to be to look, I guess, less call less attention to the window, but I wonder if or maybe this is a question, would painting the louvers white mimic the look of blinds in a window? So so it looks as if someone had a window treatment in that behind the faux muttons that have to go in front.
We could certainly propose that to Landmarks and see whether we can get Landmarks to approve that. It's not, as I said, the double louver itself is Landmarks requires public hearing. We could discuss with Landmarks and my client. I appreciate your suggestion. We can certainly discuss that.
Yeah, thank you. It seems like you have a very difficult situation and you're trying to navigate it as best you can.
Thank you.
Sean?
I'm okay with this.
Shane?
Well, I guess I'm the outlier. I am not okay with the double louver, and I'm glad that Landmarks requires a public hearing on this. I will not support the application. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you.
Kimberly?
Hi, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I am also, I take very seriously how serious Jane is about this, and I also take some of the other comments to heart. So I'm very eager to see what Anthony and David have to say about this. So I haven't made up my mind, but thank you for the effort in the presentation.
Thank you.
Marco?
Thank you. I think your proposal is well done. I think you don't have any other way to provide to condition the interior space. I think it's a very good solution, especially if you consider that you remove the two unpleasant and unattractive air conditions from the inside. I think you work very well. And the only thing I'm surprised is that usually Daikin, they do very well stuff. And probably I'm going to recommend, we usually would recommend a master window plan. Probably I think that's the time that we have to start considering the two to provide a master plan for the air conditioning. Then we can have a different solutions. But and then you can remove all the air conditioners on the window. That could be, but that's not the case right here. But I think that will be in the future. We start thinking that to resolve this issue of the louvers. But your solution is good, and I think I feel comfortable to support, and I will support your application. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anthony?
Okay. I think, as Marco said, you have an extremely difficult situation here, and I am a little surprised that that we're all not jumping up and down for joy that you're getting rid of the units poking into the courtyard. And I think that all of the alternatives to what you are proposing are visible on the slide that shows what this looks like up close from 94th Street, which is to say you have air conditioners mounted in the windows, you have an air conditioner through the wall that is just effectively destroying, not you, others, effectively destroying original fabric. And I think that any solution that isn't a louver, unless the building decides to ban air conditioning, is really just is worse. And I think what you're doing is just fine. I think Sarah's suggestion, and I think someone else Elizabeth may have made the suggestion that trying to make it look a little less like a black hole might be in order, but it's also 140 feet above the ground. And I think that any casual passerby is unlikely to notice it. And the only person who might actually see it would be someone who is directly across 94th Street looking in. So I will support this. David?
Thank you. Well, I think, Anthony, between you and Marco, you certainly summarized it well. I agree that as a committee, we haven't focused at all on the courtyard. We've focused very little on the courtyard, and that is a real plus. The minus, I think, is a lot. By contrast, I think we get a lot more on the plus side than we get on the negative side. But the negative side, there is no choice. All of the different options, and we see some of them on the building already, are really not acceptable. And I don't think in this day and age you can say to people that they can't air condition their apartments. I am a little concerned about trying to put in a light color. I think we're not going to be voting on that tonight, and the architect certainly can take a look at that. But it's one thing to have an element behind glass panes, and another thing to have an element behind a glass grid of mullions, because that looks very, very different from a window. And I think that to some extent, maybe the black is best because it tends to recede. I wouldn't call it quite a black hole, but white would tend to come forward and the black would tend to recede. So it's something possibly to study, but I'm not convinced that it would help. In any event, given all the constraints, that certainly has my support. I think the architect has done the best he can. And I think we have to thank him for what he's doing on the courtyard side and acknowledge that he's done the best he can on the street side. So I need a resolution.
I have a question, David, before we go forward. There was one close-up of this picture with the two louvers, and I thought I saw a vertical sort of divide between, yes, okay, this is it. What is that
That's-
vertical post?
So this is
correct me if I'm wrong, that's an existing condition. And we're going to have a new louver, which will be consistent from top to bottom. Is that correct?
correct. That this is a different kind of air conditioning system with an exhaust and an intake next door to one another. So it's not strictly analogous. Ours won't look exactly like
so
that.
that's not yours. So in other words, yours will just have horizontal.
Yeah,
elements.
there won't be a divider like that.
I actually had the same thought as Sarah, that it could look like wooden blinds, especially on the 14th floor. But then I thought about that vertical element, and that was concern. Okay, thank you. I can support this.
So can I get a resolution?
I would like to put a motion, and the motion is to approve as presented.
Second from Anthony. Please call the roll. We'll call the roll from the alphabetically, starting with A.
Elizabeth,
Pass.
Gail,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Anthony,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Jane,
No.
Kimberly,
Yes.
Marco,
Yes.
Elizabeth,
Abstain.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. And just one other thing, just a reminder to all of us that the best things we can do in terms of interventions is to make an intervention that is reversible. And if for some reason the next owners of this apartment don't want air conditioning, or there's a magic air conditioning solution, they will have, in fact, the opportunity to just put a window back in. Whereas holes in the wall are a lot more expensive to replace. Anyway, so.
And holes in the wall are never repaired to match.
Never. Try as you might. So our fourth and final application today is also at 1185 Park Avenue. This is Michael Doyle from Atchison Doyle. And this is a neo-Gothic building, the same one, designed by Schwartz and Gross, and also finished in 1928-29. And the application here is to renovate the light wells in the interior courtyard for new waterproofing and structural reinforcement. And so hopefully, it's all yours, guys.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Is that clear? And well, thank you, Chairman, and the committee. I think you heard the history of the building, and you've seen the outside and the master plan issues. We're dealing more with the specifics of the interior court next. You can sort of move this as we go along. I'm here tonight with my colleagues Andy Liu and Liam Houlihan, who have worked on the project. The building, we're going into the courtyard. The access to the courtyard is controlled at the front of the building. It's not a public space, but it is an individual landmark, and it has to be reviewed by the commission when we're changing materials or changing a design element. And just for the record, that's always been a little bit confusing frankly, to the staff of the commission, because we had sort of marched along without thinking there was a public hearing, but because so many things have changed over the years in the courtyard with the design, which we'll show you in a moment. And so then the chief counsel pointed out that technically we're dealing with a change in material. So that's why we're in front of you, and we're happy to be in front of you. It's I think we've met you before, and we'll try to go through this concisely and present it clearly. I'm going to ask Andy to go through the courtyard design and the changes that have happened, and this is only can be glimpsed through the portal on Park Avenue.
So in the photos here, you have on your left a photo of the courtyard in 1929, shortly after the building was originally built. This is the original courtyard, and there are not many photos in between 1929, with the exception of 1959 on your right from the Museum of City of New York. They show the interior courtyard with its fountain and its planting is dramatically changed. And then following that, as you can see, kind of, I'll point here, there were originally light wells in the building to bring light and air into the subcellar and basement spaces.
Can you point to those?
Yeah, right here, that kind of are discreetly visible on either side, and then right here on the right in 1959. Those light wells have remained, but they have contributed to have deteriorated significantly over the years, but I will get to that in a later slide. I'll flip now to current photos. This is the current courtyard as of this year. This courtyard was recently redesigned completely in 2010 by Hollander. There's new fountain, new plantings, and that was all recently redone.
It's meticulously maintained by the board is very active in every design element on the building. And as an aside, the previous presentation, which was very clear and concise, the master plan is very old, but the board tends, it's almost weird to say this, but they're tougher than the Landmarks Commission on making design decisions on the building. But you can see it's really taken care of very well, and that same concern goes to the interior court and the outside.
Excellent. So here is a key plan of the interior courtyard. On your left here is Park Avenue, and it's again, as Mick mentioned, it's a monitored entryway. Guards are at the entranceway, so there's no public access unless you are a resident or making deliveries. Once you enter the courtyard, you will have these located planting sections flanking each lobby. There are 6 total lobbies in pairs of 2. And then subsequently, there are light wells in between, intermediately spaced in between, to bring light into the courtyard spaces and into the corridor spaces in the basement. Next slide. This is an existing view of the existing light well exterior. In this photo, you'll see there's the planter walls that flank each planter. The top is a currently temporary waterproofing, watertight solution until they implement the proposed addition.
And that has been there for years.
Yes. And so the genesis of this original project was to really clean up the waterproofing and stop water infiltration, which has been a major problem at these locations. Next photo, please. This is some photos from the interior. The interior light was, you can see the concrete and rebar is rusted out, contributing to significant water damage. We actually had to do some repairs to the masonry below and some steel repairs previously and as part of this project. Next. So our proposed design, there is 3 components to this. There's the knee walls, which are in your bottom proposed diagram, which are existing to remain as they support the adjacent planters. You have the new stone in red as as deer aisle to match the existing. And what this would do as one uniform piece would kind of blend this look of going across. As you look at it, it kind of fades away and becomes part of the scenery as you transition through this courtyard to your lobby. And then the third component, which we are here before the community board, is the pieces that are laminated on top in green. These would be a granite element that is taking from kind of the tripartite division of the three lobbies, how the entryway is divided into three sections, and kind of also ties in this in the interstitial space between the planting and this light well that we are renovating. Here is on the left, a side view below the windows, and then looking down at each light well. So going into this and with a little more technicality, we would remove the existing window and the top stone, Liam pointed at, remove the existing light blocks, light well configuration, come back with new stem wall and concrete pour to create a watertight enclosure. And then as Liam, can you point to the verticals? No, proposed. That element would be one unified piece of deer aisle to continue the planter wall. And there would be a deer aisle piece that would go on the top, followed by the laminated stone.
And as if just going backwards, the grill work that you see in those photographs, none of them are original fabric of the building. Those were out of a catalog, just applied over the existing old window frames.
And then here is a kind of more technical drawing. It shows the one piece of stone that kind of blends into existing wall that runs uniform across the entirety of the courtyard, and then kind of a view from above.
And we're working with Miller Druck on the stonework, but very careful consideration to get the granite totally mixed and weathered into the same position. It's been actually, for such a small project, it's been very interesting because there's a great interest in really matching this. And the darker black fabric, black stone that we're putting on the top, which is not really black, but like a grayish.
They call it the jet mist.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that, again, we've gone very carefully through a lot of solutions, and we feel that the stonework is going to be very much integrated into the existing deer aisle granite that's forming the wall. These joints in the rendering are accentuated, but you're going to let Liam talk about this.
So did we have the joints here that we accentuated them just to show the fact that these will be the existing sidewalls with the center knee wall or deer aisle knee wall will be what we are proposing, and then you'll have the deer aisle slab on top with, again, as we said, the three tripart piece of the jet mist laminated. And you can see how it ties in very clearly with the already existing knee wall that's with the planters. And then this is our last slide.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public? Lo.
Yes, my name is Lo Vandervalk. I'm speaking on behalf of Carnegie Hill Neighbors. As noted in the presentation, these changes will not be visible from the public way. They're quite far away. However, one thing that will be visible from the public way are the guard houses, and I want to compliment the building on this. I think they were done in about 2010, probably during the restoration of the rest of the courtyard. And those guard houses are very translucent. You can, a lot of glass, but you can see through them. They don't look like guard houses, and they add a lot to the building. So I just want to hark back and compliment the building on its dedication to what is visible from the public way. I don't have too much to say. I think that we're good. We're satisfied with what is being proposed because it makes everything less vulnerable to weather and it blends in. So those are the two criteria. I am curious to know what is on top. Is that going to be just a slab, or will there be plantings? And the other question is, there will no longer be any light coming through, or am I wrong? That's the part that I don't fully understand.
Well, there hasn't been light coming through for many years, and the both air and light is now many parts of the cellar space and basement have been renovated and don't need the natural light in those areas, like in laundry rooms and a fitness center and different aspects. But it was pretty marginal amount of light that was coming in to begin with. It was more with the ventilation.
And the top is
yes.
And the top has been cast concrete, and those panels of granite are just sitting more as a decorative element on top.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that clarification.
Great. Anyone else? No one else from the public I see. So Kevin, maybe if we go from Marco to Elizabeth again.
Thank you. I think the proposal is very sensitive. On the contrary, it creates something new in the court. I think it's probably, I should say this is have more taste, more design, because the grills that you have in the perpendicular section of the light wall, I think you have problems of water, and that's what you need to waterproofing. And the name has been changed, by the way. There's no lightweight anymore, because now it doesn't work like that. But I think your proposal is reasonable, and I will support your application. Thank you.
Kimberly?
Thank you for the presentation. I'm a bit, I'm not going to say at a loss. I think I don't dislike the treatment that's been applied here, but I feel like I'm missing the thread in terms of how you got from the look and the aesthetic of the building to the design that you have here. I don't dislike it. I won't stand in the way of it, but I'm as always, I'm curious to hear what my colleagues have to say. I just wish that there was something that sort of called back to the design of the building. Thank you.
Jane?
I know exactly what Kimberly means. It's rather bland, given the beautiful architecture of the rest of the building, which is why I voted against the full louver for the window. In any case, I'll probably support the application. Thank you.
John?
I think from a structural standpoint, this seems to make a lot of sense, so I have no difficulty with it.
Sarah?
I actually had so first, thank you for the presentation. I had the same question that Lo had, because I was wondering how light was going to go through the granite, but thankfully you've already explained that. And I feel similarly to Kimberly that I understand the need to make this renovation. I wasn't sure about how the design tied back to the building. And can I just ask, was there an option to just is it limestone, the rest of it, or is that on not the granite top, but the other surfaces? What are those made of?
There,
Which surfaces, I'm sorry,
The perpendicular surfaces that mesh in with the rest of the wall there.
those are, the existing ones are Deer Isle granite and
Granite.
with an opening cut into them.
Okay, okay. Was there an interest in having a different aesthetic there rather than just going with straight granite?
In terms of material, there wasn't a change in material. There was discussion of possibly putting a framed etching of where the etched into the granite of the original
windows,
open windows.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant the top surface where you had the laminated granite.
Oh no, there was discussions at one point of glass, but it didn't gain any lighting in the lower areas, nor was there any ventilation requirements down there because of the air that had been brought in elsewhere. So it just seemed to be fighting off the deterioration that a significant part of this project, the expense is really going to be the restoration of the steel and concrete and masonry behind that. So we didn't want to set it up for another potential leak. But then there was also a concern because they really curate the garden and the design elements and even the awnings, which have been redone and beautifully redone. And they wanted to put a design element here, and that was working with the board. We developed this.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Michelle?
Yeah, let me just clarify. That element that is the new design is not contributing to light and air at the lower level any longer because that's not needed because of your lower level renovation. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay, so this is sort of here as an introduced design element. Now, I'll support this, but from my point of view, I don't know why you just didn't continue the planters. To me, it would, if there's no light and air reason, then I would have just continued the planters, and which is a statement. But my other question is, what did this have to do with the windows above? You were I got a little too much information, both with the sketch that had multicolors of pink and aqua, which apparently are not the case, and of your mention of the windows. So I'm just addressing what appears to be a bench with a granite top now. And since it's not addressing the initial issue of light and air, I wonder why you just don't consider the planters all around uniformly, all around the courtyard.
Michelle, to answer your question about the planters, we actually have the original structural drawings from the building. They actually designed the structure to be significantly smaller in these portions of the building. What that would do would involve basically ripping open the basement to significantly increase the amount of steel to allow for these planters at enormous cost to the client and the board. We've kind of really reviewed that, and it was one of the suggestions that was reviewed and thoroughly looked at before we came to the board, and also reviewed with staff prior to our community board.
So now I understand. So in other words, to allow that for the weight of a planter and dirt and water, you had to support it. Additional supports had to be created. Okay, so structurally you could not do that.
Right.
In that case, to me, this is a perfectly okay example. What's the story on the windows? Why did you bring that in?
What?
Can you flip back to the design? Sure.
Can't understand. Sorry.
Oh no, we're flipping back to trying to flip back to the.
Trying to flip back. It's not moving.
No, I'm looking at the windows right here, the windows above the,
No.
Oh,
above the
no, there's
seating.
no,
There's no correlation.
no
There's no
correlation.
exact correlation. We're just trying to unify them. I think one of the questions here is like, why didn't you do a solid slab? And I think if you go to the photo here, the solid slab kind of made it to we wanted to break it up instead of having a solid slab because it created
It's frankly a design element.
Yeah.
Okay, I have no objection to that. To me, it looks, it's going to turn into a seating area, which is fine with me because it's for your residents. It won't be inviting anybody else, so that's okay with me. So given the structural information that you told me, I will certainly support this.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Gail,
Thank you for all of your clarifying responses. I'll support the application.
Elizabeth,
I also will support it. I think the building manages itself very well.
David,
Well, I'm disappointed, quite frankly. When it had light coming through, which could still be quite pleasant, even if it's not required in the basement, I would have preferred that. At least there would have been a reason for being. I don't think it's a particularly comfortable bench, nor does it really look like a bench. And to me, it looks very mundane. I'm just very disappointed, and I will not support this.
Thank you, David. I think it's fine. I think sometimes we're asked, because of the nature of the application, to focus on a very small part of a very large project or very large building. And while I agree with David that there could have been cooler things, maybe not David's words, but mine. But I think that all in all, I can support this. So do we have a resolution? It appears Marco has his hand up.
Yeah, I would like to put a motion. The motion is to approve as presented. Is anybody can second?
Michelle seconded it.
Thank you.
And so let's call the roll, starting reverse alphabetical.
Marco,
Yes.
Kimberly, Kimberly, are you there?
Hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I said pass.
Shane,
No.
Sean,
Yes.
David,
No,
Anthony,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Gail,
Yes.
Elizabeth,
Yes.
Kimberly,
No.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you. And I think we now come to the portion of the program where we ask for old business.
correct. Looking for old business. Anybody have anything to bring up? New business? I have some new business, although I don't think we can act on it tonight. I did get a call from the chairman of the community group that opposed building the Davis Brody expansion of the Frick in the Russell Page Garden. They have discovered that only 2 feet of topsoil have been left in the garden, and that the large trees that were expected cannot live in such a shallow area. So they brought it to my attention because I did represent them when we won the situation and we defeated the Davis Brody building. But I also told them that if they wanted to pursue it, that they really needed to find other avenues, and one might be community board aid. Because there are solutions that will enable in very shallow areas of planting to support large trees. And there are some technical solutions which are doable. So they're looking for support to at least maximize the sizes of the trees can be, and that can be done. And right now, apparently, there are no plans to do that on the part of the Frick. So this may be something that will come up. It's not a secret because they're already discussing this with the Frick, but they brought it to my attention, and the possibility of us going to community board aid. I suggested that that was one possibility for them to consider. So we'll see what happens. I think they would be looking for support to at least maximize the sizes of the trees. It's a little late to ask the architect to take a foot or two out of the top of the auditorium or to lower the auditorium another foot or two. So in any event, that came to my attention. I bring it to your attention, and it may come to the attention of CB8, but it just shows my personal disappointment in the way the Frick has behaved, both with respect to the original Davis Brody building and with respect to even what they did after the Davis Brody building was rejected. So I have nothing else unless somebody else says something. Jane?
I think Michelle had her hand up before me. I hope I'm unmuted. Am I?
Yes.
You are.
I can't even go there, frankly, David. I'm not shocked because I think that Frick has been duplicitous all along. They're about to reopen with a new director. Ian Wardroper has resigned. I'm just, as you all know, the reason I resigned as co-chair of Community Board 8 was because my resolution, a resolution that was voted on by the full board, the language was changed at the end. You know, they hired Lyndon Miller at God knows how much money. She was going to restore the garden to its exact Russell Page look. Of course, that's not going to happen now. It's absolutely heartbreaking, David. And I'm thrilled that you brought this to our attention. But what can we do? Nobody cares what we think, really.
Well,
I'm just horrified.
The Frick certainly doesn't care, and when you look at that bump on the top of the building, they certainly don't care. In any event, I thought it was important for you to know.
Absolutely, thank you.
And they knew I wore two hats: the hat that helped them defeat the Davis Brody building, but also the hat that works on behalf of the community. So I told them that was the hat that I would have to wear. So they may be back to us.
Michelle?
Yeah, so preserving that garden the way it was an absolute promise that they made 1,000 times over and over again, because it was questioned all the time, that and the music room, the concern about the music room, whatever. In terms of what we could do now, can we make this an agenda item at our next meeting? Post it, notify the public so that this organization and the adjoining buildings would attend, so that we can say we have input, have a discussion, and hopefully come up with a resolution that, well, says whatever it says, either that we support them restoring it to how they promised it would be, and hopefully we could find that in our minutes somewhere. I mean, we've got the minutes and the tapes also at the board office. So if we can find that and play it back in their own words, And if we can't do that, to propose the remediation that David is talking about. But in order to have community support on it, it has to be posted. You already know you have community interest by virtue of the fact that you were notified by a community group. So let's put it back on the agenda and see what we can do about it.
I would say that you have the right idea, Michelle, but I think we need it not just as a conversation, but I think they need to send a letter. They need to formally ask us to do this. Otherwise, we're basing it on hearsay. So,
oh, you mean that you need a letter for them to tell us that this is what they're doing?
that this is what they have found out, and that they would like the support of Community Board 8.
Oh, you don't mean the FRIC, you mean the community group. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that the Leslie Samuels group, David, or no?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Well, Leslie Samuels is a brilliant man. He was a brilliant lawyer as well.
Yes.
So he was the one who called you?
Yes.
Well, so I agree. So let him put it in writing, send it to us, and then we agree to take it up.
Yeah, no, I expect to, well, basically Les was my client, and you're right, he is brilliant and he cares a lot. And he will, he said that he would be speaking to me again this week. He couldn't follow it up last week for whatever reasons. So I expect him to call me again this week. If not, I'll call him and I'll just tell him that the assumption he wants to follow it up and have Community Board 8 be in support of maximizing the size of the trees by the way the planting is handled, as opposed to not doing that.
And by the way, David, I'm not sure that the Friends of the Upper East Side even knows about this. Their most recent newsletter has this glowing article about the FRIC.
I'm sure they're expecting the garden to be back exactly the way it was, including big trees, but it's not going to happen.
Well, would they ever bring a lawsuit? To me, the only way to go is another lawsuit, and that's so expensive. But he is a brilliant lawyer at Leslie Samuels. So.
Well, why don't we start with this and also see if we can find the minutes or the audio where they are actually promising.
Well, that would have to go to the board office. Well,
I know we put it in resolutions because it was one of the requirements that most of us needed.
They could care less about our anyway. Great, let's move forward on this. I'm all for it.
I think Les's approach was actually the right one. We can't go backwards. We're not going to get them to lower the ceiling of the auditorium.
No.
So
that's why it's no longer a house
museum. There are some technical solutions that can be implemented that will enable larger trees in shallower planting beds. So, and I think that's the approach that his group would like to take, and the approach he probably would like us to support them in doing. But I really think he needs to at least write a letter so that it becomes a formal request for us to help, not just a conversation with me. So let's.
David, might
yes.
I ask a question?
Sure.
Did Les bring this issue to the FRIC? And
yes, I believe, I think he is either has brought it to the FRIC or is bringing it to the FRIC.
Because we want to know.
I can't tell you for sure which way.
Okay, because certainly I would think we have to be professional ourselves to ensure that the FRIC is aware of it. And then are they willing to explore every possible technological approach to have maximum size trees?
You are correct.
Samuels is no dope. He's really a brilliant man.
Oh, I'm sure he isn't.
I think Les remembers correctly, just as I remember, and I think Michelle remembers. Hopefully, we all remember. Yes, the FRIC promised to bring back the Russell Page Garden exactly as
I remember, and all I'm questioning is obviously that's what they should have been doing, but did in turn were they told, hey, you're not fulfilling your promise, so as an alternate, which is the only alternate that's left, figure out what technical solutions there are to maximize the height of the trees.
I think that's where Les is heading. Let's do the best we can given the situation. But apparently the FRIC was not intending to do that. They were just intending to live with the planting bed as they have it, which is apparently about 2 feet deep. And that whatever support in terms of trees, that's what they would put in. But Les had already started to have it investigated, and I forget the name of the system, but I did research it, and there are systems out there that because of the irrigation character of those systems, they can support larger trees in relatively shallow planting beds.
Oh, good.
So you take it a step at a time. I expect Les said he would call me again this week. I have just, but if he doesn't call, I will call him. I think it's important enough that I would love to have Community Board 8 support him in getting the best we can out of the frick for the garden.
And it would be great to get some publicity about this, David. The world out there, do they know? Like
the world
Paul Goldberger and Michael Kimmelman and
well, Les knows because Les lives across the street. Not only that, but as you probably know, that community group has retained an attorney, and they have watched the construction. So they were kept up to date on the construction to make sure that it was done not only to the drawings, but that it was done appropriately with respect to the community. Unfortunately, there was nobody there who was reviewing drawings, and so they discovered this issue after the fact. Okay, so that's where we're at on that one. So if there's nothing else, I need a motion to
move to adjourn.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you. See you all Wednesday night.
Well, we won't be there. You know, it's the Friends of the Upper East Side.
I know you're coming, right. Well, we'll miss you. We'll miss you.
No, nobody will really miss me, but I think Sarah's
No, that's
going
not
and
true.
Kimberly.
We'll miss you, Jane.
No, I doubt it very much. Some people will be thrilled that I'm not there, but anyway, good night all.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, all.